This video I'm making today isn't actually about reptiles, it's about who we become through them. For me, it all started just about 10 years ago when I got that first gecko. And honestly, I had no idea how it would actually change my life and somehow, in a way, lead me to sitting right here in the middle of these woods next to a river in Colorado. The journey of keeping these animals truly stripped me down and rebuilt me over the last 10 years. Now, the reason I got into these geckos and just reptiles in general is probably the reason we all do. It's kind of the same for all of us. It really comes down to just having a passion for the animals and wanting to, work directly with them, to be able to breed something, to be able to hatch out a baby, to see how that process works from, creation of life to, till they get older. And I honestly couldn't tell you exactly how I stumbled across gargoyle geckos, but somehow that was just the path that I chose to go down. And as we all know, once you get one, you get another one, and then it really becomes, an obsession in a way. A healthy obsession, at least. But that's how it started for me. After getting them and being able to get a pair and starting to grow them out, I soon created Instagram, and that just let me connect with a whole entire community that I wasn't really aware about. Once I got more into that world, the doors kind of opened up, and I saw what people were doing with these animals, what they were creating, the type of things that inspired me, seeing all these different colors and patterns, and it really made me want to be at that level as well. So eventually I started pouring pretty much almost all of my time, and I was in high school when I got my first one, so it's not much money, but I started pouring as much money as I could into these animals in order to, be able to breed and produce beautiful geckos. That was really exciting to me. And at a certain point, you start putting yourself out there, then you start getting people messaging you, hey, what do you have for sale? It never occurred in my mind that I would get, $200 at least for a gecko. That was just something that it was like, I thought it would be really cool in the future if that was the case, to actually have money. I thought it was going to be the coolest thing to just use the money from them and buy more food or buy an enclosure and not have to come out of pocket for it. I thought that would have been the coolest thing ever. And, eventually that happened for me. I made the first sale, and I wanted to keep growing. I wanted to keep doing it. And eventually, after a while, I set a goal in my head to be the best with the gargoyles possible. I wanted to produce the nicest animal in the world. So over that time, I started pouring more into the Instagram. I started pouring more into the YouTube. And I really wanted to be a person out there that people would be able to turn to. They would be able to ask whatever questions they needed. I wanted to be a person that was going to be there for other people and not make them feel like they needed to be hesitant or ask stupid questions or anything like that. I wanted to be someone that, had a really good reputation in the space and also was just overall a good example for others. Well, very long story short, after about 7 years, I eventually produced a gecko. And this gecko was absolutely, I knew right out of the egg that it was going to be something special. I could tell because I never hatched anything with that type of color before. So as soon as it popped out of the egg, I just knew it was going to be something. And over time, as it developed, I pretty much was right. It just kept getting better and better and better till eventually the full back was closed up along with the back into the laterals. So it pretty much became a fully connected gecko all the way around. And at that point, I knew I probably did something right there in terms of like my goals. And, I would obviously get offers and stuff. I'd be offered 15,000, 20,000, 25,000. I'd be turning those down because I knew what it was and it meant too much to me for that amount of money to just let it go. And I felt like, honestly, at that point, like I felt like I was right there in achieving my goal of breeding the best gargoyle gecko there is, because just being honest, to this day I still haven't really seen much that can compare to this gecko. Well, however, one of my life goals was moving to Colorado. I just loved the nature, the mountains. I loved everything about it. And growing up in Pennsylvania, it can be nice in the summer, but outside of that, there's just not much there in terms of the outdoor recreation, especially all year round. So once I moved to Colorado, I felt like I achieved one of my biggest goals in my whole entire life. And obviously, I brought all of those animals with me. Well, once I got there, I got a message from someone that was pestering me about that really nice gecko. And they basically just told me to name a price. And I think, honestly, I wouldn't have named one if the circumstances were different. But the thing is, I just moved there, and all I wanted to do was to get outside and, go explore and go do things, because I was totally out of my comfort zone. So I was ready for something different. And I wanted to keep breeding. I was still continuing to breed, but honestly, I wasn't spending as much time into the reptiles as I was back in Pittsburgh. I felt like in a way they were kind of like a distraction for me to escape the day-to-day life, because I wasn't that happy there. But once I moved to Colorado, I felt, a lot happier, like being able to go hiking and adventuring and camping like anytime that I wanted. So I entertained that message, and after a little back and forth negotiation, I ended up selling that gecko for $28,000. Now, the reason I wanted a number like that is because previously the highest known price for a gargoyle, I think, was in like the low 20s. So honestly, with my goal that I set, I wanted to be number one. So I tried to set a price that would, clearly put me in that place. To this day, I don't know if geckos have sold more than that. You don't always know what happens behind the doors, but to my knowledge, there isn't another gecko that still has sold more from that. But I might be wrong. But anyways, besides the point, at the time, that solidified that goal into my head. And the problem was, I had two main goals in my life: to move to Colorado and to be the best with the gargoyle geckos. Once I did that, I didn't know what was next. After I sold that gecko, I'll be honest, it kind of made me feel a little bit lost. It kind of made me question everything. Why exactly am I even doing this? Why am I pushing so hard with these geckos? Because honestly, what I realized is, if that is your goal, if you just want to produce nice animals, well, you're going to have to do that every single year. There's no arrival point to a goal like that. Because, probably in the year after that, someone could just produce something just as nice or nicer. So then, in my mind, that title would just be gone. So it really made me question what I actually wanted to do with them. I thought what I wanted to do with the geckos was to create a business from it and be breeding just the best geckos possible and do that as a business. And then I wouldn't have to work a normal job and, do that bull crap. I was like, I could work with my passion, but I just realized that wasn't really what I thought it was going to be. So I took a chance and I decided to leave. I decided I was going to sell my whole entire collection, be done with it, take the money from it, and put it into something different. Something that I could really continue to pursue. That's the funny thing about goals is, I think it's important to set them, but now I know, don't just have that one in mind, have something that you're looking past it. Because if you do achieve it, you don't want to be aimless after that. You want to have another thing that you can go after. And I didn't. So I decided I was going to get out of them. However, a friend reached out to me and said that they would be willing to take care of the animals for me. So that way, if I did decide I wanted to get back into it, they were there. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good deal. I'm not really going to pass that up because I knew I was taking a risk by selling everything, and that was a way to minimize that risk. Now, during that period, after I was free of the gecko responsibility, I actually just ended up living out of my car, camping, hiking, backpacking, just doing things that I've always wanted to do and never really had the opportunity because of the geckos. Well, eventually I settled on wanting to get back into it, wanting to take them further, not in the breeding sense, but I wanted to create some sort of business that was scalable past just breeding, something that I could make a larger impact with that would mean more to me. So I decided to make a little sacrifice and settle in California where I could be around that friend and we could potentially work together on things. Not that I ever wanted to honestly live in California, but it was something I was willing to do in order to get me closer to those goals. However, about 2 weeks after signing my lease there, things went wrong. I couldn't get a hold of my friend for about 2 weeks. And honestly, this was someone that was very close to me. And I thought maybe they're busy. I actually didn't even stress. I didn't think anything of it. And one day, I got a phone call unexpectedly from that friend with even someone else on that line. And basically, they felt like they didn't get a fair share of keeping these animals. And they wanted more money from me in order for me to get them back. This absolutely crushed me because this was someone that I truly considered a friend. And I would never want my friend ever in my life to feel that sort of way. So I would never put someone in that position if it was something that they felt like they needed some more compensation from it. I just wish they would have reached out to me and let me know, and I would have had no problem doing that sort of thing. I thought that we were both on very good terms because we talked on the phone. I've even been over their house, sleeping on their couch, traveled with them in hotels, and this relationship goes back a few years. And this just came out of the absolute blue to me. And it hurt. It really hurt. It felt like my animals were being held hostage. And I felt like I lost a friend, and one of the reasons I obviously moved there. Well, eventually I got those animals back. However, what I didn't realize is I didn't get all of them back. See, at the time I had probably around 60, and they were incubating some eggs for me. So there was no way for me to know every single one, but also, again, this was someone I trusted, so it's not like I was going to document every single gecko thinking that maybe something could happen to them. Well, I find out a few months later, I met them at a reptile expo, and they were selling a gecko of mine at their table that I eventually got back. And then eventually, a few months later, someone else had sold a gecko for them on their behalf, and even in the description listed that it was from my geckos. This animal I had no clue even existed, but it turns out they must have kept it back as a hatchling when it hatched, and I don't know if there were more out there. Honestly, I have no clue, but it really hurt me. However, I kept moving on because I had my stuff back. I was determined to rebuild things for myself, and I was working on my Instagram every day. In fact, that was probably the most effort I put into Instagram. It was doing really well. But one day, I get a message from Instagram when I go into my account saying that my account has been disabled because it went against the community guidelines. Now, if anyone knows me, I don't post anything ridiculous, crazy, edgy, none of that. It's very straightforward with my animals. And I thought, surely this has to be a mistake. On the option, it gave me ability to dispute it. Although it did warn me, if they still find that this account goes against their guidelines, they will be permanently deleting the account. But I didn't worry at all. I was like, this has to be a mistake. Well, about 30 seconds after disputing it, another message pops up saying, we've still found your account goes against the guidelines, and it has been permanently deleted. Just like that. Just like that, all of these things that I was working towards were gone. I lost a friend. I lost the reason I moved out there. I lost my identity with the Instagram. I put a lot of my identity into that account. And on top of that, I didn't move there with a job. I moved there wanting to build. So I didn't even have a job. And that was probably the most stripped down I've ever been in my whole entire life. I mean, on top of losing all of that, I also had an $1,800 a month lease, and I had about $120 to my name. The California chapter to me of living there had basically stripped me down to nothing. No friends, no family, no money, no identity, nothing. And from there, I knew I had to just put my head down and rebuild. And that's what I did. I just started working. I worked hard. I built my savings back up. I tried to get things back on track. And honestly, just try to figure out, what am I even doing with myself living there? Well, in my free time, I would still go out and do adventures and camping and hiking and things like that. And I decided I wanted to see what the redwoods were all about. Little did I know that they would genuinely alter my mind and how I viewed things. Going to see the redwoods was a totally unique experience to me, and just seeing how much destruction there was, it really touched me. And to see that although there's only 4% left, the fact that people had the foresight to know that it was a special place and it needed to be protected. That was something that really expanded my mind and planted a seed in me. And so I knew I needed to leave California. I knew that wasn't a place for me. I knew I wanted something different. So I set out to move back to Colorado. And I ended up here in Durango, Colorado. And I know that I want to work towards creating more examples like the redwoods. And I think a great place to start is with these reptiles, because a lot of what we do is protect our right to keep these reptiles. However, not much is put into protecting where these animals come from. They give so much to us, and we put a lot of money into making sure that we're able to keep them in our house. But I think we can actually make an impact towards real conservation. So right now in my life, I'm rebuilding with clarity in a place that I actually want to be. And I have a vision and projects that I am working on to bring that to life. And I am just here sharing this with you guys as a way to put myself out there again, and also a way to not just make it seem like it's only about the animals, because at the end of the day, these animals can change your life, and not necessarily in a financial way, but they can do it in a way that they've done for me, taking me to many beautiful places, meeting some amazing people, teaching me a lot of life lessons. None of this would have happened without these geckos. And for that, I owe them so much. And also, none of this would be possible if there wasn't a community out there that had supported me as well. But now I feel like it's my turn to give back to the animals. And with that, I'm just going to leave you there. I have some things I am working on, that maybe I'll put something out there in the future once it comes to more fruition. But I just want to let everyone know that, it doesn't just always have to be about breeding the nicest geckos possible or animals possible or selling an expensive whatever. There's a lot more depth to this. They alter the way we live our lives. And just know that they can probably do the same for you.